this is the first time I've done this particular Sheets workshop, so we're going to do a quick recording. So just to reiterate really quickly, our agenda for the next 45 minutes is we're going to talk about what is a Google Sheet, how we access them, how to create one, how to add content to a sheet, and our sharing options, and then we will have time at the end for a Q&A. I'd like to note that this is about a 45-minute workshop or so. We might wrap up just a little bit early. So this isn't going to be exhaustive on every formula you can do and all of that. This is kind of an overview of Sheets. I will be sending you this slide deck here, and I will be sharing lots of resources with you so you can kind of continue the learning, and definitely feel free to reach out to me with specific questions that kind of come up. But I just want to kind of cover the expectation here is this is a broad brush overview of Sheets. We don't have time to dig into every little formula that you can do. All right, so without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. And due to the nature of this is kind of going to be informational. Feel free to try and follow along if you can, but for the most part, just kind of sit back, absorb the information, take good notes, and then when I send out the following tomorrow, when I send out the recording and the resources, that might be a good time to actually dive in and practice. All right, so what is Google Sheets? Google Sheets is an online spreadsheet program created by Google. So if you're familiar with Microsoft Excel, Google Sheets is Microsoft Excel, just owned by Google as opposed to owned by Microsoft. So it's an online Excel spreadsheet. It's an online spreadsheet system, not Excel spreadsheet. It's an online spreadsheet system owned by Google. There's some kind of advantages and disadvantages to using Google Sheets versus Excel. Google Sheets is a lot more streamlined than Excel. It makes it easy to input data. It makes it easy to find what you're looking for, which means it's a little bit easier to learn. However, it is less robust than Excel. For everyday use, Google Sheets and Excel are pretty comparable, but if you really need to do some advanced data processing and you're really comfortable with Excel, Excel is still where you're going to want to do a lot of that advanced data processing, because Google Sheets just isn't quite up to muster with that. But like I said, it's really easy to learn, it's easy to jump into, and Google Sheets has some nice features as far as data analysis go that might make things easy for you. So let's kind of dive in a little bit. How do we access our Google Sheets? So Google Sheets is part of the Google Suite, and to get to the Google Suite, we have to go online. It's a cloud service, so everything that lives in Google lives online. So I highly recommend using Chrome when you're accessing Google. They're optimized to work together. So definitely open up your Chrome browser, go to www.google.com and sign in. And you're going to access your district account, you're going to want to use your district school email. So that username, hancock.a@monet.k12.ca.us. And then it's your same password that you use for everything else. Once you sign in, instead of having that blue sign in button, you're going to see your initial there, and you're going to see the little waffle icon, and the waffle icon is where you click to get into Google Sheets. So once we sign in, we click on the waffle, and then we get the little Google App Launcher that opens up here, and you have actually two different ways you can get to Google Sheets. You can click on the Drive, which will take you to your Google Drive, which is where all your Google Sheets live, or you can click on Google Sheets to go specifically to your Google Sheets area of your Google Suite. So we're going to take a look at what both of those look like. If we click on Google Drive, any sheets that we've already created are stored on our drive, and we can see them and we can open them up. So here I can see in my drive, I've got quick access to two of my sheets, and I can tell they're a sheet because they have that little green icon there. Let me kind of highlight that. I can tell that these are sheets because they have this little green icon here, and this one's a sheet as well. So I can access them, I can click on them, and that will launch a Google Sheet for me. The other way to go about this is to click on the Sheets icon here. And when I click on Sheets, whoops, go ahead and move forward a slide there. When I click on Sheets, this is the web page that will appear instead. And I'll see the option here to create some new spreadsheets. And I'll see a history of any sheets that I've worked on previously. I won't see any of my other Google Doc formats here, just my Google Sheet formats. All right, so now that we know how to get to our existing sheets, we need to know how to make new ones because we may or may not have existing sheets already depending on what we do in Google. So to make a new sheet, I have two ways I can go about it. So just like we have two ways we can get to it that we just looked over, we have two ways that we can go about making a new sheet. We can do it from Google Drive itself, or we can do it from that Sheets page. So if we were to go from the Drive interface, once you open up Drive, on the left-hand side, there is a New button. You're going to click New, and in that drop-down menu that shows up, you're going to click Google Sheet to make a brand new Google Sheet. If we're instead in that Sheets interface, this one is pretty straightforward. There's a whole gray section up at the top there that says Start a New Spreadsheet with some different templates. If I want to start a brand new blank spreadsheet, all I do is click on blank, and that will start a new spreadsheet for me. So a couple easy ways to make new sheets. Either in the Drive, we go New Google Sheet, or in the Sheets interface, we just click New Blank Sheet. We can also import sheets into Google. So if I already have some great Excel documents that I've worked on and I want to bring them into Google to practice, I can also import an Excel file into Google Sheets as well. So we're going to review that process really quickly. I can upload a file directly to Google. And to do that, I have to go to my Google Drive interface. So I need to go to that waffle and I need to go to Google Drive. And then to import a file, I actually click New. Seems a little bit counterintuitive. I'm not actually making something new. I'm uploading something, but I still click that same New button. And then in that menu that pops out, I can do a new file upload, and I can upload anything on my computer into Google Drive. If you attended the Google Drive webinar earlier today or last week, you probably went over this process. In this case, we're highlighting that specifically any Excel file format you want to bring into Google, you can bring into Google and it will convert it to a Google Sheet for you. One thing to kind of keep in mind is you might have to convert it. So when you upload that Excel file and you click on it to open it, you'll just need to tell it to open with Google Sheets and it will convert it for you. On the other hand, if you attended the Google Drive training and you set up the setting to automatically convert, it might automatically convert for you. It just depends on your settings, and we certainly can go over that at the end if we need to. Oh, perfect. Actually, I have a slide on it, so never mind. So if you do need to convert a Google file automatically, you don't want to manually convert it when you upload it, you'll do this step first. So in your Google Drive area, you'll click on the gear icon. And in the pop-up that pops up, you will check the box that says always convert uploaded files to Google Docs editor format. That means it's automatically going to convert it to the Google format for you. So when you upload that Excel file, it'll automatically convert it to a Google Sheet, so you don't have to worry about that. So that I do highly recommend going in and changing that setting so you don't have to convert things. And then once you change that setting, then you can go through this process here to upload an existing Excel file into Google Sheets to see what that looks like. All right, so we've created a new sheet or we've imported a sheet. We need to talk about what the Google Sheets interface looks like. So in the example that I'm about to show you, I started a new blank sheet and I want to kind of dissect the different parts of the screen that I'm looking at. So this here is the new blank sheet, and I have some different parts of the sheet itself. So the very first thing I'm going to want to look at is the title of the sheet. When I make a brand new sheet, it is untitled by default. It's just going to say untitled spreadsheet. I do want to make sure to change this. If you start having just tons of untitled documents, it can be a little bit tricky to find what you're looking for. You cannot share a sheet until you name it. So definitely come into this title and give your sheet a name. All you do is click on that title and you can call this sheet whatever you like. Below the title are our different menus. We're going to take a look at one of the menus today. And there are a lot of other features in the menus, but a lot of the other quick access stuff is going to be in the next setting. But essentially here you have your file ribbon, you've got edit, you've got view, insert, and when you click on these, other options drop down. And down below that you have the toolbar. So the toolbar has some quick actions. We can see as we kind of move along, undo, redo, print. We've got formatting options, we've got font options, we've got some different text wrap options, and you might not know what all of these icons do. That's okay. We have a little guide a little bit later. But here's the toolbar, and you can quickly access different settings and different options right here by clicking on these icons. Down at the very bottom, we have our different worksheets. So I can see this document has only one sheet in it. You can kind of think of this as analogous to a piece of paper. This has one paper in it. I can add other sheets, and we are going to go over that, and you can navigate quickly and easily between the sheets. But in this case, I just have one sheet that I'm working on in this document here. And then we have columns. So spreadsheets are made up of columns and rows. Columns are always lettered, and Excel mimics this. So I've got A, B, C, D, E, F running there along the top. Those are my different columns. They are always going to be lettered, again, because that's just the format. And then we also have rows. So our columns run vertically, our rows run horizontally. Columns are always lettered, rows are always numbered. So here I can see if I'm, at the intersection of C5 is where these two blue boxes intersect. And then where the row and column intersect creates a cell. And that's all those thin light gray lines there. Each individual one is a cell, and every single cell can have a different piece of information in it. And you can see what cell you're currently selected on because it's going to be outlined in blue. So here I'm selected on cell A1, and I can tell that because the column I'm in is A and the row that I'm in is 1, and that cell is highlighted. It's going to have a light blue outline around it to let me know that I am currently on that cell. If I need to enter data in that cell, I'll click on that cell, enter the data, and then I can click on a different cell to enter data into the different cell. So each cell is going to have its own set of information that you can put into it. And we're going to look a little bit more at that in a little bit. So number 7 is our current cell. Number 8 is the Explore button, which is going to allow you to find additional data or give you some additional options for your sheet. We will look in depth at the Explore button a little bit later. And then finally, the whole reason we are using Google is to have this share function. Well, maybe not the whole reason, but one of the reasons we love Google is this share functionality. So if you need to share this sheet with somebody else, you can come up here to share, and we will go over some share settings at the end. So that's the different parts of a sheet. Now let's talk about adding content to a sheet. There's a lot of different content that you can add, but Google Spreadsheets is mainly for data entry and maintaining large amounts of data. That's kind of where it shines, and then it can do calculations for you based on that data, provided you've entered data really well. So we're going to talk first about just basic data entry. So if I just want to start entering data, you click on the cell that you want to enter data in, and you just start typing. You can add text, you can add numbers. Once you get a little bit more comfortable, you can do formulas, you can do functions, you can write out long, complicated strings of information. But, to kind of start, you can just click and just start typing. So here I can see in my picture here, I'm on cell C1, and I'm starting to type out the number 3. I've already entered 1 and 2 in my first row. And then for my first column, I've entered 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can kind of see that I've started to enter some data in each individual cell. And then I'm currently editing cell C1. Just a quick keyboard shortcut for you. If you are entering data and you need to enter that, you don't want to click on the next cell and enter data and click on the next cell, because that just gets a little bit cumbersome to keep lifting your hands off the keyboard to use your mouse. There are some keyboard shortcuts you can use to navigate cell to cell to cell to cell. So if I were to start on cell A1 here and I entered that number 1, if I use tab, that's going to move me over to the right. So it's going to shift me from A1 to B1, where my number 2 is. If I then use tab again, that's going to shift me over to C1. So tab moves you to the right. And then if I need to move down, instead of entering text downward, I use enter to move down. So on cell A1, I hit 1 and then I hit enter, and that moved me down to A2. So those are helpful keyboard shortcuts. Definitely just practice those. It takes a little bit of time to get the hang of using tab and using enter, but it is, once you get the hang of it, it is quicker than entering your data, lifting up your hand, clicking on the next cell, coming back to the keyboard. The tab and enter keys are going to be really helpful for you. You can also use your arrow keys, but I do find that tab and enter are good because they're kind of at the point of use already. All right, so another thing to kind of be mindful of is if you are entering a lot of data into a single cell, just the way that the layout of Google Sheets is you may not fully see that content. So in this example here, in cell E22, I can see Fred, Smith, and K. and that box is there in blue, and the K part has been cut off, but I think there might be some more information in there. So I can look where my green number 3 is in the address bar within the Google Sheet to see the full contents of that cell. So in the actual sheet itself on E22, I see Fred Smith and K, but when I click on that cell, I can see Fred Smith and Kimberly Van Horn. I can see the full contents of the cell. So I just want you to be mindful of that too, is sometimes just depending on your layout and structure, your cells might have more information in them than you can see just because of different space restrictions. There are some different ways to manage that, but I just want you to be kind of cautious of that and then know that at any time when you click on a cell, its full content is going to load up in the address bar. That is also where you can see any formulas that you've entered. One little tip that I'm going to throw out here is as you start to do data entry, if you're kind of keeping track of different pieces of information, dedicate one column to each piece of information and group that information together. So a visual example of that here is I want all my last names in column A, all my first names in column B, and all my student IDs in column C. And then each row is going to be a record for an individual person. So row 2 here, I could enter Hancock for the last name, Alexandra for the first name, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the student ID. And then I would have one row for that person with each piece of information in its own column. Organizing data by column makes it so much easier at the end to do pull different tables and run different calculations because your data is already really well organized. There are certainly some other ways to organize data, but by far doing it by column is the easiest, and it sets you up for the best advantage later when you want to do more complex calculation. All right, so that's the basics of data entry. Like I said, we're not going to be able to get into the full formulas and functions, but I am going to show you where you can find those and give you a resource on how to insert those formulas and functions. So let's take a look at some additional data entry options. So if I need to add some additional items to my spreadsheet, maybe I need to add a picture, maybe I need to add a function, maybe I want to link to something, maybe I'm keeping a bank of resources. The best way to go about that is to use the insert menu. So kind of jumping back really quickly to our layout, the insert menu was in that number 2 in the different menus there. So here we clicked on insert, and then we're going to jump back really quickly. Once we click on the insert menu, we have some different options of things that we can insert. The first thing that I want to make sure to do before I even click insert is I want to click on the cell that I need to bring content into. Then I come up to insert, and then I have some different options. So where my number 2 is there, that group, is I can insert rows or columns relative to the cell that I'm on. So if I'm on cell C2 and I click insert row above, that's going to bump that cell down to C3, and it's going to add a new row that would take the place of C2. Same thing with column left or right. If I'm still in cell C2 and I click column left, that's going to add a column to the left of C2, and that means that it's actually going to move to D2, and it's going to insert a new column C. So you can easily insert columns and rows, and it's just going to be relative to whatever cell you're currently selected on. So you can easily go insert and use these options to give yourself more space in your spreadsheet. Additionally, we have some other visual information we can bring in. So I've kind of grouped all my visual information together. Certainly each one of these is going to have their own options, but where my number 3 grouping is, I can bring in a chart, which is going to be a chart of different data, and I can build that chart out myself. I can add images. The nice thing about this image option is I can upload an image from my computer, or I can actually do a Google image search right here from Google Sheets, and I can bring an image that's based on the web, so I don't have to go find the image, download it, upload it. I can just go to insert image and do a Google search for an image. And then finally, as far as visual information goes, I can bring in a Google drawing to a specific cell in a sheet. Google Drawings is kind of its own thing within Google. So if you do them and you know what they are, great, you can bring them in. If you don't know what they are, definitely take a look at Google Drawings. It's kind of a separate training though, so don't overwhelm yourself if you don't know what they are already. If I need to insert a mathematical function, I need to start doing calculations with my data. That lives here in the insert menu as well. I can come into insert and I can do function, and there's all kinds of functions that live within Google Sheets. There's an exhaustive list. I think Excel has over 400 functions, and I think Google Sheets has very close to that. It doesn't have all 400, Excel does, but I think it has over 200 functions. So if there's a math calculation you need to do in Google Sheets, odds are it's going to be able to do it. Again, we're not going to be able to go over every function. This will kind of walk you through building the function that you need, but there is a resource that I've linked on this slide here. To see all the functions in Google Sheets, visit this resource, and that will go over every single function available to you in Sheets and the basic formula that you need to get started with that. And again, I will send you some resources on that and how to enter functions in Google Sheets. All right, and then finally, you can also bring in links. So that number 5 there, insert link, you can bring a link into any outside web source. So if you're building a bank of resources, you can go online to any other website, copy the link, you can come into insert and you can do insert link. You can paste the link in there and you can give it a title. So instead of one really long link, you get a really nice succinct title, and you can click on that to open up the web page that you've linked. So lots of different things that you can bring in. I highly encourage you after this webinar to open up a new sheet and just start playing with some of these insert options. And then when you're done with it, you can just delete the whole sheet, and that could just be your sample sheet. That way you're ready to go for when you want to make a real sheet. That's kind of how I learn, is I always create a practice file and I just play with everything I can play with, and I don't have to worry about breaking it because it's not a real file that I need to share with somebody. All right, once we have content in our spreadsheet, we have some different customization options for how that spreadsheet looks. So to make a change to a cell or a group of cells, I need to first select the cell that I want to format. In this case, I've selected several cells, and the way that I did that is I clicked on one cell and I dragged to highlight all the rest of the cells. So in this case, I'm looking at cells F, and I'm in column F, and I'm looking at cells 1 through like 13 or 14. I don't have my numbers on the sides, I'm not exactly sure. But I just clicked and I dragged to highlight all of those, and every cell that's selected in the blue will get the changes that I make to it. I could also just do a single cell, or if I did Control A, I could select everything and make changes to everything in the spreadsheet. Once I have my cells selected and highlighted, I can use some different icons in the toolbar to format my cells. So we've got a lot of different options here. The first row there is just undo and redo, and we have the option to print. We also have the option to copy the formatting from any text and apply it to another set of text. So that there is called the Format Painter. If some of you use that in Microsoft Word or Excel, that works here in Google as well. That third row there is our number formatting options. So in this case, I wouldn't want to use this on the data I have selected because I don't have it set to a $sign or a percentage or a decimal. But if I did have numbers that I wanted to format, I could change them to currency, I could change them to percentages, I could increase and decrease the decimal. I can also use that number drop down there, 1, 2, 3, to change the type of number that I'm looking at. And really quickly, I'm going to take another pause here and just highlight these tools are coming from my number 3 here. So in this case, in the side where we're just looking at, they're arranged vertically, but they're here horizontally. This is what I'm looking at as far as formatting my cell goes. So that third row there, these are my number options. I have the option to change my font and my size. I just click on the font name. I click on the size to change the font and the size. I can make anything bold, italic, underline. I can strike it through. The A with the colored line underneath it will allow me to change the text color. The paint bucket with the line underneath it allows me to change the fill color. That's the color of the cell itself. I can add borders to my cells with the little 4 squares here. I can group cells together or ungroup them. And then these are some of my other text options here. I can change the alignment, so whether it's left, center, or right. I can change, how it moves down the page. I can use this line here to wrap the text or unwrap the text. And then the A at the angle, I can change what angle the text is at, with it being at the 180 degrees by default. I also have the option to insert links and charts here, so we don't have to do it through the insert menu. There's also links on the toolbar to bring, or icons on the toolbar to bring in links and to bring in charts. I can also add filters, and there is also a button to add functions. This is the same as the insert menu add functions. I can add functions with this spreadsheet customization with the toolbar as well. I know that's a lot of information. Again, you are going to get a copy of this chart so you can kind of go through and see what icon does what. And again, I definitely encourage you to play around, make a new spreadsheet, and give yourself permission to just kind of test things out. All right, so far we've only been looking at one sheet of data, and we've been looking at multiple cells within those sheets. However, you can have multiple pages of data within one single workbook as well. So to find this, you're going to look at the very bottom of the window to see the different sheets you have available. And if you need to make a new sheet, you just click the plus sign at the very bottom left there, and that will add a new worksheet for you. Worksheets are helpful because you can kind of gather different data in different sheets, but you can keep them together as one document. So here I can see I have a sheet dedicated to my form responses, so where I'm gathering data from a form. I have another sheet that's called Daily Count, which does calculations that counts, the number of people I have filling out that form. And then I have a sheet 5 here that I might have made by mistake. I use that plus to add that sheet. I can always get rid of sheets too. To get rid of a sheet or to change some options about a sheet, I click the down arrow next to the sheet name, and I have some different options. If I want to delete this sheet or duplicate this sheet, I can click those top two options. The first one obviously will get rid of the sheet entirely. The second one there will duplicate the sheet. Just to kind of take a brief pause here, if I do delete a sheet and I did it by accident, I can always undo it. I also can go into the version history, which I will go live and show you. I can go into the version history for any sheet, and I can bring back a previous version. So you're not permanently losing anything in Google ever. So I can delete a sheet, I can duplicate a sheet. I also have some options as far as sheet organization goes. I can rename my sheet. So instead of calling this sheet 5, I could call this weekly count. I can also change the color of my sheet. None of these have a color change applied to them right now, but if you do like organizing your different topics by color, you can change the color of the sheet, and that will just kind of faintly change the color of the tab down below. We do have some of the other options there. You can protect the sheet, you can hide the sheet, and you can move the sheet around in this tab area. And then I just want you to note number 4 there. So we do have 3 sheets here. The active sheet, the sheet that I'm currently working on, is going to be selected in white. So sheet 5 is the sheet that I'm currently working on. My other 2 sheets are a light gray. That lets me know that they're inactive and they're not currently being worked on. All right, the next area we want to take a look at is the Explore button. The Explore button does different things for different sheets. It looks at the data that you've aggregated, and it finds different things for you. So to use the Explore button, you have a couple different use cases. The first use case is you're selected on a single cell, and that will look at the data overall. So that's what we're looking at on the left here. I clicked on a single cell, and I clicked Explore to find a lot more information about my data as a whole. And I have some different options. The first thing is I can ask questions of Google about this data. You want to be you don't want to be too wordy with your question. You might just want to say, how many people did I have on this day? What is the average time? Think of really quick questions, but you can type in a question and this Explore button will do its best to answer for you. You can say, what was the total number of entries? I also am going to get some formatting options. So this is going to be a great way to kind of color code and differentiate and add alternating rows to make my data look a little bit nicer. And then number 4 here, there's going to be some different tables it recommends for you. It may or may not recommend a pivot table. It may or may not recommend a chart. This stuff will kind of vary, again, depending on your data. And then you can always use that scroll bar on the side there to see even more in this explore area. If I want to explore a specific set of cells, so now we're kind of looking at the right-hand side there. Here I've got a bunch of webinar times, and I want to kind of see how the data varies from time to time. I can first highlight a group of cells to get data about, then click the Explore button. And you can see my data here looks very different from my data on the left-hand side for the overall sheet. So here I'm getting count of webinar times. I'm getting some different graphs for how I might want to count the number of webinar times. If I kept scrolling, there would be some additional information. I can see a sum down there at the bottom. So again, depending on what I've selected, the Explore button is going to be contextual and it's going to give me different results. I really like the Explore button for making charts about data. It does a really good job of making really nice looking charts, and it saves me the hassle of having to go in and make a chart myself. So I highly recommend once you have data, use that Explore button and see what it makes for you. It's really cool. All right, so we're kind of coming down to the home stretch here. With the idea that I do need to go live and show you guys a couple other things, but let's talk about sharing now, because again, we're doing this in Google. If you did the Google Drive class, some of this information will be repeated, but I just kind of want to reiterate how we share a Google Sheet with somebody else so we can collaborate on it. So just to kind of reiterate what sharing means, sharing is not the same as emailing a file back and forth. When I email a file back and forth, I'm actually creating multiple copies of that file, and it becomes a little bit tricky sometimes to find what the current version is. Sharing in the context of Google is much more like two people working on the same document at the same time. So maybe working on the same piece of paper. So the beauty of that is we can collaborate. The danger of that is that we can collaborate and you're giving somebody permission to your entire document. However, Google has great safeguards for that. So when you share from Google Drive, you can control who can edit, you can control who can comment, you can give people view-only privileges, and you can kick somebody out if they have maybe made a mistake or they've ruined something. And I will show you that version history as well, so you can always go back in time to see where, to recover any edits that were made. So how do I share with people? So in this case, we're going to look at sharing with somebody specific. So you've got somebody in your department, somebody in your PLC who you need to share this sheet with. Once I've started my sheet, I can come into the big green share button in the top corner, up by where my avatar is. Once I click on share, this window is going to pop up here, and it's going to ask me if I want to share with specific people. I can click in that box there, and I can type the name of anybody at the district to share with them. I can also share with an outside email address, provided it's a Google address. So if I have a personal Gmail I want to share this with, I can type in my own Gmail account. If there's an educator at another district I want to collaborate with, I can type in their email. They just need to have access to a Google account. Once I add the name, I can decide what level of permission I want to give that person. So I can click the little pencil icon. The pencil means they can edit. I can also give them commenting privileges or restrict them to only viewing privileges. And I just want to reiterate here, until you share, your file is private to you. So it's not like anyone can go find your file. You actually have to share it with them to give them that view access or that edit access. Number 4 there, I can add a note if I want to. This note will go in the email that lets them know I've shared this with them. So this is optional. You don't have to do this, but you can. And then once you have this configured how you like, you hit send, and then the person who receives this is going to get an email notifying them that this has been shared with them. They can open it up and you guys can work on this together in real time. Now, there's another way to share. I can also generate a link and I can share out via a link. A link might be helpful if I have a large group of people that I want to get this out to, and I don't want to sit and type in the name of every single individual in this box here. A link is easy to get. It's just kind of up to you how you want to configure those settings. So to share using a link, we come to that same share button. This time though, instead of typing in the name of specific people, in that same pop-up box, we're going to look for the little text there that says Get Shareable Link. When we click on Get Shareable Link, we have some options that generate here. This is kind of what will generate. It'll say link sharing is on. And then it'll say anyone at Modesto City Schools with the link can view. You can change this level of permissions, and we're going to look at everything you can do it. You can look at all the different permissions here in just a minute, but you can change that level of permission. And then once you're happy, you copy the link, you click copy link, and then you can then paste that link into an email and send it out to whomever needs access to it. So who can you share with? When we're looking at this number 3 here, we can click that drop down and we can choose any of these options here. So we can say anyone with the link at all can access it. We can restrict it to just Modesto City School users. We can just restrict it to Modesto City School users with the link. We can give them edit rights. We can give them viewing rights. So you can come in and you can really configure this. Additionally, you can turn this off. So if I created a link a week ago and I realized that somebody forwarded that link to a group of ne'er-do-wells and those ne'er-do-wells are ruining my sheet, I can come in and I can turn this to off, and that will disable the link for them so they can no longer access my document. So it's easy to change these levels of permission here. You just come into that drop down again where number 3 is, click the drop down and just switch to whatever level of permission you need. Disable by turning it off. So what can people do with your file? So if I give people edit permissions, that means that they can edit the document. They can add to it. They can take away from it. Commenting means that people can make comments on my document. They can't change the content itself, but they can make recommendations. They can add their thoughts, and you can delete those comments if you need to. And then view only is what it sounds like. They can view my document, but they cannot make modifications to it. Depending on my view settings, they can make their own copy though. So this might be helpful if I'm doing a presentation and I want my attendees to be able to see my presentation but not edit it. I could create a view link, and then my attendees could then go on and make a copy of that if they wanted to do their own version of this presentation. So that's the nice thing about viewing. All right, so we do have a couple things I want to go live and show you really quickly. The version history is one thing I want to show you. And then I also want to show you a couple other options. So give me just 1 second to share that with you. While I bring that up, if there's any other questions, go ahead and start posting them in the chat. All right, so you should now be seeing my Google Sheet. This sheet clearly has a lot of data already in it, and this is the sheet that I was kind of modeling. We have some different items here, but let's say that something happened and this got messed up, and I need to go back to a previous version of this. There's a couple different ways that I can do this. Normally, here we go. This is what I'm looking for. Normally, there's some sort of text here. This is all changes saved in the drive. Once you make a change, everything that you do is automatically saved for you. Once you see this gray link here, you can click on this to bring up the version history. So that's one way to get into the version history. The other way, if you don't see this, because it wasn't showing up for me at first, I can always go into File here. And in File, I can go into the version history, and I can see version history. So that's going to let me see every single version of this document. So I can see here all the different edits that were made. I can see here yesterday, a group of people made some different edits, and they're going to be in different colors. So I can see here Mike Rich was in green, Angela was in orange, Christy was in blue. So I can see that Angela might have done something here with this sheet. If I click on this here, I can see some different edits. And then if there is a version that I want to go back to, I need to go back in time to a certain version because somebody maybe messed something up. I can always click this restore this version button here, and this will take me back in time to the current version that I'm looking at. So again, to get to this, I can click on this link here or go File, Version History. I can see a history of all the different versions. I can see who did what, and I can restore the version if I need to. Are there any other questions for me? Okay, so Angela posted the attendance link, so please take a minute to fill that out. And then a question came in, if you restore a version, do all of the changed versions disappear? Are they still accessible? So if you restore a version, you're essentially taking an old version and coming and bringing it, making a copy of it and bringing it as a new version. All the edits before you went back to that version are still there. So yes, all your versions are still there, even when you restore a version. Yeah, so the question came in, so entering information into a cell, there's not a need to grab the corner and enlarge it if the info was just at the top. Yes and no. So if I come into this sheet here, if I look at this column E, I can see that some of my data is cut off. If I want to adjust it so I can see all the data, I certainly can. And I can come in and I can grab the edge of the column to expand that out. But in this case, I kind of have to expand out pretty far, but all the data is still captured. So however I adjust this, when I do select on an individual cell, I do see that information up here in the box. So it's kind of up to you. If you like seeing all the data, definitely feel free to adjust these so that your text fits how you want. But you always can look up at the formula bar to see that content. That content is always there, even if it's visually hidden. So it is really, yeah, visual preference. It's up to you. One other thing that might be helpful is this text wrap feature. It is in the table that I showed you there, but like, let's say I do want my column this width because it fits best, but I want my text to all show up. I can also turn on a feature called text wrap. And what I want to do so it applies to the whole column is I click on the column, and then in my toolbar, I look for the line with an arrow coming out of it. This is my text wrap. I can click on this and click the second option, and that will send any text that overflows onto a new line. So a couple different ways to visually tweak that. Another question, can you copy from a shared sheet to create a private sheet? Yes. So if somebody shared a sheet with you and you want to make a copy of that, you can easily do that. You can either make a copy of the whole sheet, or you could just copy cells and paste them. It would probably be easiest to make a copy of the whole sheet. So to do that, you come up to File, and you choose Make a Copy. And that will make a private copy just for you in your Google Drive, and it won't be shared with the original creator, unless you choose to share it. Another question, you can extract part of the sheet. Yes, if you don't want to copy the whole sheet, there's just certain pieces of the sheet that you need, you can do that. Let's say I just need this last name and first name and the webinar name. I don't need the rest of this information. I can highlight the information I need, right click on it and copy it. And then I can paste that into a new sheet. So let's say I copy this here, and then I could open up a new tab, come into my waffle, come into my sheet, make a new sheet, and then I can just right click and paste it, and that will pull all that data into that new sheet for me. So I'm not copying everything, I'm just pasting what I needed. You could paste it into a Word document, and you could also paste it into Excel. Yeah. So once you copy, you've got that data, you can paste it wherever you want to. Oh, that's a nice question. I am having a nice day. Thank you very much for asking. I hope you guys are all having a nice day too. All right, so looks like another question here. So for example, if you want to create a sign-up sheet for students to meet online, would you recommend using a Google Sheet or a Google Form? I would recommend using a Google Form. The reason for that is if you do a Google Sheet and you give all your students edit rights to the Google Sheet, they can overwrite each other either accidentally or maliciously, and that might be a headache for you. What you can do though is if you make the Google Form can send all of that data to a Google Sheet for you to look at. And that's actually what this example sheet is here, is all of the data is coming from a Google Form and it's aggregated nicely on the Google Sheet for me. So that's kind of how I would recommend going about that. If you need any help kind of one-on-one setting up that form in that sheet, definitely shoot myself or Angela an email and we can set up an appointment with you. Let's see, Google Docs will only let you have a maximum of 3 columns, which can be very frustrating if you're making a list of high frequency words and you need 4. So can you set a page that only has a certain number of columns? What would it be? Okay, so the question is about a Google Doc specifically not working in Google Sheets, if I'm understanding correctly, Dan. And it sounds like a Google Doc limits you to 3 columns. But if you need to make something that's like 4 columns wide, I believe you can do that if you do a table. So if we just really quickly, this is kind of an off topic, but if we go into Google Doc and we make a new document, we are limited to 3 columns just like formatted, but we can go into insert and we can bring in a table and we can make that table as wide as we need to, and it will just automatically fit it to the page that we're on. So if I need it by 4 by, however many, I click on that, and I have a table that's 4 by 13. And then, so in Sheets, so Sheets let you have as many columns as you need. Sheets, to a certain extent. So here in this sheet here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I've got up through column J, but if I keep scrolling, it will continue on. If I need to print that, there are some different options I have for printing, which might be more at the heart of your question, Dan. If I do print this, I can decide how I want to print it, and I have some different fit options. So if I just do fit normal, that might be where I'm running into some restriction. But I can switch my page orientation. So if I just do portrait and do normal, I might be stuck here with the 3 columns that you're concerned about. In this case, it was able to fit 4. But what I can do is I can change from portrait to landscape, and I can change my scale. So let me click this. Sorry, it's taking a second here, but I can change my scale from normal to fit to width, fit to height, fit to page, and that will shrink down my text to fit to what I'm seeing. And then I can also change my margins. So if I drop this down to narrow margins, I get even more of the paper that I can print on. So definitely when you go into print, try and play with these settings first before you print, and that should give you a lot more space. Another question, is there a Google Forms webinar? There isn't one this week, but we'll look at offering one next week. So stay tuned for that. going to paste the webinar attendance link one more time at the bottom there. If you haven't already filled it out, please make sure you fill it out. That's how I'm going to mark your attendance in the PB catalog, so you get credit for today. I'm also going to use that list to send you the follow-up email. I'll probably send it tomorrow with this recording and with a copy of the slideshow I used and some additional Google Sheets training options for you. And if you aren't the type of person that can learn on your own, I know a lot of us are not that way. We kind of need hands-on. Angela and I do offer one-on-one appointments, so we can sit down and work together for 20 to 30 minutes one-on-one to kind of help you understand Sheets a little bit more. All right, thank you everyone for joining me. I will stay in the call for another 10 minutes or so. If you've already got all your question answered and you feel comfortable, you can use that red hang up button to leave the call, and anyone who stays on the call can continue to ask questions. Thank you very much, and I'll hang out for the next few minutes. Yeah, thank you everyone.